You didn't fail. You won. You built the thing. You got the revenue. You became the person that you were chasing. And now you wake up in a life that looks like success, but it feels like obligation. Because here's what no one is going to tell you about high performers. Winning the game, it doesn't mean it was the right game. Scaling something doesn't mean that it's still aligned. Becoming who you had to be, that can trap you into someone that you are not. This is the high performer prison. You can't walk away because people depend on you. You can't slow down because your identity is tied to momentum. You can't name the ache because everything looks fine. So you keep going. You optimize. You perform. But underneath it, there's resentment, a quiet craving for stillness, a whisper, there has to be more than this. And here is the hardest part to face, guys. The systems you built for safety, the routines, the content engine, the offers, the lifestyle, they've actually become the walls of your cage. And most high performers, they don't leave the cage. They either burn it down in a panic, or they stay in it forever, numb and quietly bitter. But there is a third path, one that doesn't require recklessness, one that doesn't destroy every single thing that you've built. It starts with awareness. Then comes the identity shift. Then a strategic realignment, brick by brick. In this video, we're going to walk that path together. Okay, we're going to start with the root cause of all of this. The way high performers turn pain into productivity and forget how to feel anything else. So let's get into it. Here's how performance becomes a coping mechanism. You didn't really become a high performer by accident. You became this way to survive. Somewhere along the lines, maybe as a kid, maybe during a crisis, maybe when the stakes got too high. You learned that achievement was safety, not love, not presence, not connection, but results. You learned that winning bought you attention, control kept chaos at bay, solving earned you belonging. And over that time, it turned into a worldview. If I am not producing, I am not safe. If I slow down, I lose everything. If I don't carry it, no one will. This is how high performance becomes your primary coping strategy. And the world rewards you for it. You rise fast, you become reliable, you win. But the cost, you lose access to everything that doesn't serve performance. Joy, curiosity, desire, play, even grief. You don't have time to feel. You don't have space to process. You optimize your nervous system for execution, not embodiment. And at some point, that system starts to crack. You're no longer fueled by passion, just pressure. You're no longer creating, you are just reacting. You're no longer driven, just obligated. And the scary part is, slowing down kind of feels like death. Not physically, but psychologically. Because who are you without the pace? Who are you without the proving? That's the identity shift that we're going to begin to unravel next. But first, we've got to look at why so many high performers try to escape. There's a prison, okay? And they try to escape it by torching it. But here's why you don't have to, all right? This is the burn it down urge. There comes a moment in every single high performer's life when the mask starts to suffocate. You've done everything right. You're safe on paper, but inside you're really tired of carrying it all. And that is when the burn it down fantasy starts to show up. What if I just walked away? What if I sold the whole thing? What if I just disappeared for 6 months and didn't tell anyone? It's not just about work. It's about your life script. the brand that you've built, the persona that you've kept alive, the relationships that you've maintained out of duty, not desire. It's tempting to throw a match on all of this stuff because deep down, you believe that the only way out is through destruction. And for some, that's exactly what happens. The founder who ghosts their own company, the dad who checks out emotionally, right? The operator who quietly self-sabotages just to feel something again. Trust me, guys, I have been there. But you don't need to burn your life down to reclaim it. You just need to stop performing, and you have to start renegotiating. Renegotiating what you say yes to. Renegotiating what your brand requires of you. Renegotiating your identity. Not as a complete reinvention, but as a return. Because the urge to destroy it, it's really just a cry for space. Space to feel, space to choose, space to exist beyond utility. But before you take drastic action, you've got to ask this instead. What am I truly craving underneath this chaos? The answer usually isn't freedom from everything. It's freedom to be someone else for a while. So let's start rebuilding, right? With a new foundation that actually honors who you are now, not who you had to become. So, the identity you outgrew, let's talk about it. High performers, they rarely question their identity because it's always worked. You've been the reliable one. You've been the builder, the closer, the one who figures it out when no one else can. It's who you became to win, and it's worked for a very long time. But here's the thing, guys. Every identity, it's got an expiration date, especially the ones that were built under pressure. So what made you successful is now keeping you stuck. The armor is just too tight. The system is too brittle. The story that you've been living no longer really fits the person that you are becoming. And yet, you hesitate to change it. Why? Because who you are, it's kind of tough to figure out who you are without it. You've worn the mask for so long that it's grafted to your face. You don't even know what you want, only what others need. You don't know how to rest, only how to recover just enough to keep going. You don't know what lights you up, only what pays. So you stay. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. This is the quiet crisis that most successful people face. Not failure, but irrelevance to themselves. And it's subtle. There's no breakdown wins, there's no rock bottoms. It's just a slow erosion of self until one day you are a stranger in your own life. But here's the shift. You don't have to destroy your old identity. But you do have to retire it with grace, with respect, with consciousness and separation. So you can rebuild from the inside, not for the market, but for yourself. So let's talk about how to start that rebuilding process. Okay? Practically, one decision at a time. That's how it's done. All right? Let's talk about rebuilding, okay, with starting over, but not necessarily. All right? We talk about selling the company. We talk about moving across the country, starting a farm in Vermont, and never opening your inbox again. That's kind of extreme. That's not really rebuilding, guys. That's escape. And while escape can feel intoxicating, it's often just avoidance in disguise. The real truth is, you can rebuild from right where you are without blowing it all up, without abandoning what works. But you've got to shift from performance mode to integration mode. And here's how you start doing that, okay? First, audit your agreements. Look at every part of your life. Business, schedule, social commitments, content obligations. You gotta ask, is this still serving who I am now? Most founders, they are trapped in invisible contracts that they never really renegotiated. All right, number two, you have to design micro freedoms. You don't need a sabbatical. You need 90-minute blocks where your nervous system can exhale. Joy doesn't have to be extravagant. You can start with something like this: no phone until 9 a.m. Music without a goal. Time with people who don't need you to be impressive. Number three, update the output to match the season that you're not who you were. Sorry about that. So that you're not creating everything in year two like your business was in year one. You've got to shift your content cadence. You've got to shift your offerings, even slightly, to match the energy that you want, not just the revenue. This isn't about throwing the engine away. This is about retuning it to run smoother, quieter, longer. You've already built something rare. Now it's time to make sure that you can live inside it. So let's break down a quiet framework that's going to help you navigate this season with clarity and with dignity. Okay? This is the slow rebuild framework. All right? You don't need a 5-year plan. You need one clear next step that doesn't collapse your nervous system. That is the premise behind the slow rebuild framework. It's a quiet, sustainable model for realignment that prioritizes internal truth over external optics. This is how it works. All right? The first step, stabilize your baseline. This is not about optimization. It's about regulation. Clean up your sleep, input, and your movement. Create 1 to 2 non-negotiable rituals that ground you every single day. Eliminate energy leaks, people, platforms, even small habits. When you are stable, clarity follows. Until then, you're chasing alignment on a dysregulated foundation. Let's talk about step 2. Reclaim 10%. Don't reinvent your whole life. Take back just 10% of your week, just for you. That might very well mean something like 90 minutes to write something that matters. It could mean a single afternoon each week without Slack or email. Maybe a weekly walk with someone who doesn't care what you built. Start small. Reclaim just enough to remember exactly who you are. Step 3, signal the shift. Once you feel the shift internally, express it externally, but gently. Update your bio or positioning. Adjust your content tone. Mention what you're leaving behind. People are going to respect the honesty, right? You don't need a dramatic comeback. Just visible signals that your brand is evolving on your terms, no one else's, right? This framework, it is not flashy. It's not going to go viral, but it will get you back to yourself and without collapse. Let's get into the final section. Let's pull it all together. And let's name what this entire journey is really all about. Aliveness over achievement. You didn't get here by being lazy. You did not build this by accident. You earned your place. Every single dollar, every milestone, every single inch. But somewhere along the way, you stopped asking why. Not why you started, you know that, but why you're still going this way, at this pace, in this shape. And when you slow down just enough to ask that question, here's what usually is going to bubble up. I want to feel something again. I want to wake up with a pulse, not a plan. I want to live, not just deliver. Okay, this is the final shift from achievement as identity to aliveness as a compass. Because success without sensation, it's a trap. Because performance without presence, it's a cage. Because being the best means nothing if you cannot feel it. You don't need to walk away from every single thing in your life, but you do need to walk back towards yourself, towards laughter that isn't necessarily monetized, towards stillness that isn't strategic, towards the vision and version of you who's allowed to just be, not build. You've spent years proving but now you get to choose. And the new path, it's not going to be loud. It's not going to be impressive. It's not even going to make sense to a lot of people out there. But it's going to feel like you're breathing again. That is your signal. That's going to be your edge. That is your next chapter. Okay? Now, subscribe to my newsletter for weekly reflections on identity, peace, rebuilding your life after success. Okay? That's going to be at natberman.com. You can also join my private community for founders and operators who are building calm, powerful brands without burning out. That's going to be at joinbrandbuilt.com. Don't worry, all the links are in the description. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, and we will see you in the next video.